Hi, crew. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight on our Agile Austin coaching meetup. So let's click through. So my name is Lonnie, and I am one of your co-hosts here this evening with Sid. And so we love to bring you speakers who are really here to help deepen Agile coaching specifically, and then just coaching in general. So we know that the more that we can learn about what falls under that Agile coaching realm, which can be anything from talking about how you coach, about building culture, leadership, and we'll get into today's topic. That's really going to help us to be more effective in our work. And we do meet every month at this time. Central Time, we're based out of Austin, though, as we've already talked about, we do get folks from around the world, which makes it really awesome. And we love having speakers as well from everywhere. And then for a little bit about Agile Austin, if you were not familiar, so some folks may be joining us for the first time. And if you found us through Meetup or through LinkedIn, thank you for being here. And so you can find out more about our additional meetups if you are interested in like leadership, in Agile Scale, Book Club, Scrum Master. And then we do have some monthly speaker series, and that's all on meetup.com/AgileAustin. And really great conversations there as well. And Agile Austin is a nonprofit. Really what we focus on is a lot of building and fostering that culture. And like I said, it says Austin, but especially because of the pandemic, we've had the opportunity to really expand that out. But so really strong community, whether you're looking online or in person here in Austin as well. And we want to make sure that we thank our sponsors. So, here they are on the slide. Thank you all so much for being able to sponsor meetups like this. And as I said, some of the other ones, and we do sometimes have some other additional events, which I'll jump to and talk about. So if you are interested in sponsoring and being on that page, we're always looking for sponsors who can help support some of our activities. For our members, if you're interested in joining, in addition to the meetups that we have, you also have some special perks of being involved in some of the more community, be able to vote and sit on the board. We also have some special events. There's always a yearly conference, which is awesome. Last year's was a hybrid event, so a little in person, a little virtual. So definitely a lot of benefits there as well. And then we want to also thank our board who helps to keep us organized. So you can see here again on the slide. Do you have any questions? They're always willing to share, and as are Sid and I as we go through. So thanks, folks. And with that little intro, I am going to pass it over to Sid to introduce our speaker.
All right. Thank you, Lonnie. So I've been really looking forward to this because it is my delight tonight to introduce Lakshmi Ramaseshan, Director of Agile Coaching for Paciolan. I've had the pleasure over the last 12 months of getting to know Lakshmi pretty closely because she was my accountability partner in a coaching program that I was part of, we mentioned earlier, called Magnesium, run by Aaron Randall. During that time together that we've worked, I have been truly enlightened and inspired by Lakshmi's focus on living and working at a sustainable pace. Lakshmi has over 2 decades of experience in the software industry. She's a passionate Agile coach who has dedicated her career to growing people, building high-performance teams, and fostering trust with those teams. In this talk, Lakshmi is going to share her journey at Paciolan for creating a platform where teams can be introduced to new topics simultaneously, learn, and then reflect on them together. I hold Lakshmi in high esteem. I'm a huge fan And I'm confident that tonight's sharing her experiences and her insights are going to be valuable to you all, and it's going to be a fruitful discussion. So please join me in welcoming Lakshmi Ramaseshan.
Gosh, thank you, Sid. I tried not to cry.
So we're going to hand over to the sharing to Lakshmi, and we'd love to hear about your journey. By the way, as Lakshmi is sharing her material, Lonnie, if you want to stop sharing, if you have questions, we're going to ask that you put them into the chat, and we'll have plenty of time at the end to go over it. But in the meantime, we're going to hear about Lakshmi's experience. And thank you, Lakshmi. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm overwhelmed by that introduction, and it's truly been a delight, Sid, to get to know you over the past 12 months as well. So the feeling is mutual. And I wanted to say I'm so excited to be here. Sid and I talked about this months ago, and I was like, wow, it's around the corner, so I better prepare, what I'm going to say. And I'm truly grateful for all the Paciolan peeps that have joined, and my friends and supporters from everywhere in the US. So really appreciate you, and no heckling. I think I already said that. So hopefully, I will make this, an entertaining discussion. As I said, this is, even though the questions are going to be towards the end, definitely think about how this lands for you, and share your questions in the chat. And we're really looking forward to seeing how this resonates. So in addition to everything that Sid shared, I wanted to share my perspective from a coach, from a coach's point of view. One thing that I really value is enabling an inclusive space. I really get excited when I'm facilitating conversations and teams are able to get to meaningful outcomes. And you all know, as facilitators and coaches, that takes a lot of great care and design. But then you also have to help the teams grow a little bit and help them be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because that's where the growth is. Sustainability, as Sid said, is really important to me. I'm on that journey, work in progress. And I feel like over the last few years, I've realized that it is really important to embrace a more sustainable way of living. And my dream is to carry that over in the organizations that I work with as well. And learning, I can't say too much about learning, but I'm an insatiable learner. And I think because I am keeping sustainability in mind, I am now trying to really focus my learning goals on things that will be ahead in my journey, that will help me grow more, versus learning everything, which is what I used to do before. So trying to really embrace learning as well. And I feel like I have a really strong sense of purpose, and I'm grateful to be a coach and to do this type of work because it truly excites me. So I know, Erin, this is for you because you love poems. This is an excerpt from a Robert Frost poem that I grew up as a child. And really it is to signify that there is such a long journey ahead, and I'm looking forward to all of the meaningful work, working with teams, working with individuals to help them become a better version of themselves and serve organizations in the most meaningful way. So, so thank you for being part of this story, and really looking forward to a discussion today. So before we get started into talking about building a learning organization, I want to know how you see things. What is the collective wisdom in this room about learning organizations? What does that mean to you? What challenges do you see in building this type of an organization? And if there is a secret sauce, what is it? Would love for you to share it in the chat. You can come off mute as well, and share some of your thoughts. Want to just harvest a few ideas before we get started. Yeah, growth mindset. Organization's not afraid to fail, definitely. Make time for learning. Joanna, I'm going to talk about that. Growth mindset. Reflection. Time for learning and growing. Yeah. Okay. Not everyone learns the same way. Yeah, for sure. Balancing curiosity with value delivery. Wow, great thoughts so far. Awesome. So everyone is in the right headspace, right? So let's dive right into it. So I want to start by painting a picture of, as coaches at Paciolan, this is our high dream. We talked about sustainability and the importance of that in our lives and at work. Our belief is we want to build a sustainable world-class organization. And it's world-class because we get to feel safe, we get to be comfortable with who we are. We are motivated because our internal compass is aligned with the organization and the team goals. We work well with each other, which means we have good, healthy habits and we get into flow. And as a result of all of that, we build great things. But we know as coaches, as leaders, as team members, part of Agile organizations, this takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of intention, continuous reflection, and learning to figure out what is part of our team system that is serving us well, and what do we need to do to get to the next level. So if this is where we want to go, the question is, where does learning fit in? Or maybe that's not the right question, because I think learning is the work. If you're not learning, what are you doing, right? And learning is different from training. Training is different from learning, right? Learning in my mind is about reflecting, about experiencing something, applying the learning, about really, understanding what works and what doesn't work, about sharing that with each other. That's what learning is to me. So as coaches, we started to think about, okay, how do we build awareness of the importance of learning? What is the impact of learning as a collective? Because individual learning is different from collective learning. And where do we start? What can we expect on this journey ahead? So those are the questions we were pondering. So when we started, and I've been with this organization with Paciolan for the past 3 years, Paciolan has, for anyone that doesn't know Pac, we have really passionate people that love to collaborate, right? But yet our system of the organization was lacking some balance and cohesiveness. Our engineering teams were out of balance at different points in their journey of development. And our business teams worked in sync with each other, but were out of sync with engineering. So obviously we had some work to do there. When we observed a little bit more, we found that the engineering teams needed more consistency in adopting lean and agile principles. We're a lean, agile organization. We needed to really develop that mindset to continuously improve, which comes from reflecting, with practicing what we're learning, with understanding how it lands with us, understanding what works and doesn't work, and really making that part of our team system. We needed more clarity and alignment to purpose as well. When we observed the business teams, we found that they worked really well together, but they were out of sync with engineering. We have really great enterprising business leaders that drive new business ideas, but we struggle with a lot of work in progress in the organization. I'm sure a lot of you face the same thing. How can we build a sustainable organization if we have so many initiatives going on? We also needed more alignment with engineering on shared goals. So again, balance and cohesiveness, right? That's really where we were lacking. So then our journey began. We said, okay, we need to really figure out where we need to focus. So the first year, we focused a lot on laying the foundation and building community. We started with some of the foundational training on lean agile principles, understanding how we use JIRA, inception process, which is how we do kickoffs, value of playing to our strengths. We needed to all start to speak the same language first. Then we started to build some channels, some Slack channels for us to start communicating our thoughts with each other so we could be in that same headspace. We started experimenting with lean coffees. We started with communities of practice with our managers and lean coffees with teams. So that was year one. Year two, we went a little bit deeper. We said, okay, well, is there a way for us to understand what are some of the learning gaps in the organization? So we conducted some team maturity assessments, rolled up some of those teams retrospectives and figured out there's probably some top 3 learning gaps that we could ascertain from that. So that's where we focused. And we reestablished our channels of learning and started to use our lean coffees that we were already doing on a biweekly basis to focus on those learning gaps. We invited participants from every team to listen in and take those learnings back to their teams and started to reflect as a collective. So that was year 1 and 2. And now year 3, which is we're still in the middle of that, we're trying to make learning more fun. So I have a great team of coaches that work with me, and we're building immersive learning experiences and building more of the human skills that we need to be able to work better together, going back to that human sustainability. And all along, we knew our organization was lacking clarity. So we started to really be intentional about how we're kicking off work and really aligning teams to their purpose. So quite a lot on the journey, right? Year 1, year 2, year 3. So what did we find out is we have to make time for this. As we talked about, if learning is the work, we need to make time for it. So as coaches, we started to, continue to create that system for learning, continue to make time and space for it, just like breathing. But yet the best laid plans are always broken. So we needed to sense and respond to the organization's needs. Sometimes there were things happening in the organization and we had to, reschedule or cancel our lean coffees because we had to really be more, in service to the teams and what's happening. And we needed to continue to believe in the purpose of learning because we believe in collective learning. And we wanted to continue to evangelize that and build the experiences. So this is what we learned from the journey of the engineering teams. When we took the journey with the business teams over the last 2 years, that looked a little bit different. It was more human-centered. We focused a lot on psychological safety, understanding intrinsic motivation, playing to our strengths, and then helping with business teams understand what does it mean to be aware of your team system. Started to develop identities of each business team and started to reflect as a collective, looking at that team system. So their journey was a little bit different, right? More on the human-centered side. And what we learned from the business team's journey was it's really energizing to build community. There was already community there. We just needed to spark it a little bit and come together to talk about some of these meaningful topics that we needed to, surface more in the organization. The business leaders also took a lot of time to co-create this journey with us and make these workshops more relevant. And that increased the engagement from their end. And again, when you have leaders that commit to this work, there automatically is more rhythm and consistency because they make time for it. So that is something that was really meaningful. So that's a lot between engineering and the business. We had 2 parallel journeys going on, and now it's at the point where we started to look at the impact as a collective. So when we looked at the journey that we've experienced so far, it started with playing to our strengths. We started to become more aware of our team system, made reflection more of a habit, embraced incremental growth more, that whole concept of continuous learning, started to build more communities and develop shared experiences. And this is where we get to build from. So what's ahead? Where are we going? It's really to unify our learning. Today, so far, we've taken two separate journeys, but now we're at the point where we can start to build learning opportunities where engineering and business can learn together. And it's time for us to synergize how we work together across engineering and the business to become one organization. So we can get into more rhythm and we can get into more flow. So what's next? We want to continue to discover those learning opportunities. And this is something that is near and dear to my heart, because when we join organizations, there's always so much to learn. And as an organization, as a collective, we have those learning opportunities, but it's really helpful if we align our individual learning goals with those shared goals, because we feel more connected to the whole. So that is something that we hope that we can all do so that we feel part of this journey together. The second is we want to continue to build those diverse communities. We've done a lot of good work already, but we want to continue to be more intentional. And we want to partner with those community builders that are not found yet. The people that are excited to build communities just like us. We want to partner with evangelists that want to take this work back and be those change agents for us as we continue to grow the organization. And finally, we want to establish rhythms, because we know that there is valuable learning to be had, but it's only possible if we continue to make it consistent. Because if we just do it every 6 months, we're really not going to be learning together. This needs to be more of a continuous thing. So we want to make it more a habit. So where we're going is we want to get to this place where we have shared consciousness. We know that when we have the shared language and the experiences, we can collaborate better together because we've all been part of that journey, right? We understand each other a lot more. And when we start to collaborate with each other well, we can innovate, we can adapt. When there's change in market conditions, we can all adapt because we all understand where we're at. We're all in that same headspace. And this is all getting to the place where we get to build happy and healthy teams. That is really where we want to be. A sustainable organization is where there is human sustainability, where we individually feel happy, we feel fulfilled, and we're aligned to the organization's goals. So as a result, we get to better outcomes. So that is where we want to be. So if we're all continuous learners, how might we make learning a priority? And how might we integrate learning as part of our team and organizational system? So at this point, that's the end of my story. I want to open it up for questions, thoughts. This is where the magic is, all the discussion.
Awesome, thank you. I do have a question right off the bat. So one of the things that we've thought about in our organization and haven't really been able to bring it to life, and I'm wondering if you've had any experience with it, because it's like if you can lift up the stories then of how people are doing things, then that becomes like a shared value, and like people like the practice spreads. One of the things we talked about doing was like a failure celebration, which nobody really wanted to do. But what it was really supposed to be was, what was the learning? Like what, let's tell the stories of the things that we learned, the things that didn't go right, and then like spread those stories, like through a lean coffee or through some sort of like collective event. Did you see anything like that or have any experiences where that might work, or has anybody else? I'm just curious about how that might work.
That sounds fascinating. No, we haven't done any failure stories. What we did do was a couple times we had a chance to reflect across all of the teams, to share what were our wins? What were some of our struggles? What did we learn? So it was more kind of wrapped in that discussion, but that sounds really interesting.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
There was one question in chat. Joanna asked, what do you see as your next biggest challenge in bringing engineering and business teams together to learn together and from each other?
I'd say the biggest challenge always remains making the time. So that everyone is so busy. And I think that is when we're trying to build a sustainable organization, where learning is part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. How do we slow down a little bit to make time for it? So I think that's always the continued challenge, hoping that we can all evangelize it more and really create more awareness. Yeah. Make time.
Mark, you had a question? See your hand.
I think Kieran was ahead of me.
Was he? Okay. I did not see that. Kieran.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Let me turn. Yeah, one, you were mentioning like organizations needs to support learning into the development process. What is the recommended percentage, in your experience throughout your journey, like how much time you allocated for team to learn apart from the daily work they will be getting, right? So how do you push back on like so many things coming up and integrate your learning into the development process daily?
Wow, what percentage of time? I actually don't think about it that way, but that is a good question. I guess if we have to quantify it to leaders, I know amongst my team of coaches, we block out Friday afternoons for learning. Doesn't always happen, but at least if we block it out on our calendar, then we're thinking about it. And if there is a conflict that shows up, then we're going to repurpose some other time for learning. So I feel like it almost comes back to what does each team want to do and to integrate learning. Is it something that everybody can do together, or do you give each individual time to block their calendar out? It's more of a discussion that needs to happen. I don't like to say 2 hours, 3 hours per week. That's really up to the person. But if the team is on a journey and if the team is committed to building certain habits, they need to talk about what is that going to take, right? Are they going to learn together? Are they going to reflect on that? What is the time that they need? And again, making learning a priority it needs to be a discussion. And then I'm hoping that each team is going to come up with what is it that they need to do and make that part of their work week, right? So we're a lean agile organization, so we use Kanban, but if you're a Scrum or you use Scrum, then it's something you build into your sprint plan. Learning needs to be part of the work. It needs to show up on your Jira board, whatever it takes to make it sticky, right? So hopefully that helps.
Okay, so it's again depend on the team, how much percentage they need for learning, or depending on the priorities set for the team. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the second question I have is like, for example, if you mentioned like you have 10 development teams and 15 or something like that in business teams, and how do you combine all these learnings and share across all the teams? For example, one team is learning something and other team is learning something, to reduce the time between the learnings. Like how do you have like all the teams come into the same pace and same learning as the other all 10 teams? Otherwise, like you're talking about synergy between the teams, like how to coordinate those things.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, we're still learning how to do that. So I think the idea is that each team is on their learning journey, but we have some collective learnings as an organization, right? So if we look at it from that perspective, creating these forums, so we've had a couple of lean coffees where we've reflected together, where each team, a representative from each team has had a chance to share what have they taken away, what have been their wins, and what have their struggles been, and what have they learned. So there's been a lot of community sharing there, but again, we want to encourage some of that organically too, right? So if we have evangelists and change agents that are coming from every team that are part of these, then they get to build a community and share that amongst each other. So it doesn't necessarily have to always be orchestrated. It can also be learnings that are happening organically that are being shared between the team members. So, so I don't know if that answers your question or.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't want to jump the queue, but can I just share something related to the Kiran's question?
Of course.
Yeah. So on one of my recent project, what we did was emphasize with the team, obviously, that retrospectives, for example, are a must. You can't skip over those. So that is one way of creating some time in their calendars, which seems very obvious and easy thing. But at the same time, in a lot of time, people are just focused on their work, and sometimes they skip retrospectives. The other thing which we introduced was that for the 6 or 7 teams which we had, we started a retrospective of the retrospective session every fortnight. So that happened generally after a week after all the teams had the retrospective, so that we could bubble up any of the issues the teams might have, which we need to focus, and we could see from a management perspective whether we can solve some of those problems. So the thing is that we need to systemize some of this time into the that's the way we did into our calendar, so that we make sure that things are happening and the actions are being taken and then they are addressed.
Okay, retrospective is to go like figure out what went good and what went wrong, right? But the are you including as part of retrospective even the learning, what they found out, and then what they learned new, and then collecting those learning things as well, or is that what you're saying, Shoaib?
Yeah, so two ways when we have a learning organization. I think Lakshmi, you asked about that, what we meant by the learning organization at the start, and two ways. So one is obviously about the ways we are operating. The second could be about what the organization is learning in the marketplace around its surroundings and the systems as well, right? So all of these are learnings. So at my different organization, we had very closed product teams, which were cross-functional teams, truly cross-functional team, with the product and the sales and the engineering all sitting together. So at that time, Kiran, what we were doing was we had we're not following SAFe or Scale Agile there, but what we introduced about 10 years ago is a learning cadence of every quarter, where all the business and the teams will come together and they will share the learnings they were learning about the market. So the key is the cadence. And the second thing which we did was obviously that how the management is learning, what the teams are learning. So what's good happening, what are the things needs to be improved, but not every team can possibly fix the things they are finding about the shared services, for example, or the things which are probably wrong with the partners, or many of those things which are outside the control of the team, but they come up in the retrospectives. And the retrospective of retrospective could possibly allow the management to learn some of those things, where the flow is a problem, why the flow, which are stopping from the business value to flow properly. And then you can possibly take actions at the program or portfolio level to start solving those. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Yeah.
I think we
Thank
have,
you.
if we want to, let's move to Mark. And then we have also a couple of questions in the chat I want to follow up on, hopefully.
Well, being a longtime remote practitioner, I hate to ignore the ones in chat, but is it Shoaib? The next one after me?
Yes. Yes.
Did you kind of get to your question, or do you still have your question?
I still have question I will ask after yours.
Sorry
No,
about that.
go ahead. I would say go ahead and ask yours since you're already talking. And may I suggest we go to chat, and Lakshmi might want to come back
We'll
to
come
that.
back to you, Mark. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. My question is about the learning organization. So I have worked at some organization where they had about 25 departments going through the same, or the program teams going through a scale agile kind of transformation. Now, it might be off topic, but my question was more around when you're building the learning organizations, how you sustain the culture at a large scale, like we are probably 25 teams of 10, like 250 agile teams are going through, and they have plenty of budget, they have plenty of agile coaches to support them, but once the change is embedded, you have a great culture. How you sustain it over a long period of time when the agile coaches has left and the team leaders who have become agile, but over a long period of time, they leave the organization as well. So what, if Lakshmi, you or anyone of the participants could share their experiences to sustain an agile culture or learning organization culture, that is my question.
That is the golden question, isn't it? I mean, I think that is hard. I'd say you just have to start with first building the culture within your organization where you have the change agents and the community leaders that are with you, right? You can't just have the coaches talking about culture change. Everyone needs to believe in it. And in my mind, culture is really not, oftentimes is thought about, the happy hours and the team building. Doesn't really go a long way in building culture. You really have to treat each other well. You have to build those alliances and work well together, establish healthy habits. And when that happens, culture starts to seep into the teams. So when you have change in leadership and let's say the coaches step away and the teams are more self-organized, culture is something the teams have experienced as well. So when it becomes a way of working, no matter what, that's what human sustainability is all about, right? So when you're really talking about culture change and not just installing a framework, it goes a lot deeper than just an agile transformation, right? Because it comes into how we work on a daily basis. And that's really my hope as we continue to work with Paciolan, with all of the teams in our organization. Everything that we do on a day-to-day basis really enhances the culture. And when we step away, it doesn't matter if the leader's in the room or not. Everyone else has already experienced the goodness of having that great rapport and that great habits, all the great habits the team has built, that they're going to sustain it. That is, maybe that's wishful thinking, but that's really what I believe.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear what Sid.
Right? Self-propelled.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. There was a question from, and this goes a little bit off a little bit, but I do want to address it. Michael Nussbaum in the chat. With larger organizations, have you implemented SAFe, or do you prefer any of the agile methodologies such as Scrum or Kanban in relation to this topic, I think?
I'm not really a SAFe practitioner, so I can't talk about SAFe, but I mean, when you think about learning organizations, it doesn't necessarily need to be restricted to one framework or another, because it's really a mindset and what are the systems you're building within that organization with the constraints of the framework that you have. I don't think the framework really lends itself to any to whether or not you're building a learning organization. I feel like it's two separate conversations. Irrespective of what framework you're using, you can still have those conversations on how do you build the rhythms and the consistency to learn together. And that can be woven into whatever you're doing, whether it's Scaled Agile Framework or Scrum.
Right.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
And if there's varying points, we'd love to hear that too.
All right. If there are no other comments on that, I'll move to one more in the chat and then we'll come back to Mark. Joanna Denny, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. This was sort of a question for anybody, and there has been some threaded discussion in there, but this is almost more of a choosing your own learning direction question. So how do you decide which direction to learn in, as opposed to learning everything in your path? You'd mentioned, Lakshmi, that you have experience with this.
Yes. So the insatiable learner in me wanted to learn everything. And, being an agilist, there is no end to learning. There is always something to learn. But then I realized I can't do that. I can't boil the ocean. I need to really learn things that are going to serve me on my journey ahead. So depending on what my goals are, if, I wanted to get better at being an enterprise coach, then I looked at learning opportunities that would serve me in that direction. So that's how I started to do it. And I think when you look at the system of an organization, that's why we actually facilitated some team maturity assessments when we tried to figure out what are the learning gaps across the organization, what are some common patterns that we see, and where can we invest the collective learning. But then in addition to that, there is each team may be on their own journey, and there's probably things that the team needs to learn in addition to what we want to learn as a collective. So teams then get to choose what they want to learn and invest the time accordingly. So it's almost synergistic, right? You try to figure out the top learning objectives across the organization, but then you choose your own adventure. The team gets to choose what they want to learn as well, and then really create a plan for themselves.
Second that. Start with the outcome in mind and work backwards from there. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And and then you can actually be more sustainable. Voila.
Yeah. You're focusing on the right things, not all the things. Yeah, definitely. All right, I want to go back to Mark.
Thanks, appreciate that. And my dog appreciates it too. She's barking in the background. So this is kind of a variation on, and I apologize if I mispronounced Shoab's question, but she's distracting me now. But it's a question I've been asking myself, and I want to also apologize in advance to your Paciolan community that's here. I do not mean anything by this question, but it's a question that I know that Lakshmi will appreciate. So when we were Scrum Masters, there was always the phrase of putting yourself out of a job. So in the context of your talk, what would need to really happen for Lakshmi to walk away from Paciolan?
That's a beautiful question.
And I'll warn you, I can't answer in my own situation right now either. So just to be fair.
I think for that to happen, right, learning, I think we talked about culture change, and that needs to really be embraced, and it needs to really be part of our organism, right? Like it needs to be living and breathing. And learning, that's our hope, is learning is the same thing. Learning becomes like breathing. We automatically try to figure out, okay, what do we want to learn, prioritize learning, and make it part of how we work. So that would be my dream, right? When I step away from Paciolan, then that is embedded in the organization. We're always thinking about how we learn and how we continuously improve and get to the next level. I mean, high performance is not a state. We are continuously getting there. When we get to the top of the mountain, there is always more. There is always more, and there's always ways that we can improve. So that's really what I would hope, is that it's so embedded in the organization that it becomes a way of thinking and believing. And we're not struggling to make time for it. We know the importance of making time for it, and it becomes part of our team system. That's really my hope.
Thank you. And if I could share, well, I said I can't answer right now for where I'm at, but I once got to meet a martial arts master who started his discipline and was handing it over because he was just getting up there in years. And I had the chance to ask him, and I said, so what do you want to happen with your system? Because I hope to see it a few years and not recognize it.
That's that.
Yeah. So, figured I'd share that with you.
That's beautiful.
I have a question. Lakshmi, one thing that this is kind of triggering me when you think about learning is there's a lot that we're aware of, like there's that awareness piece of, yeah, I know this is like the organization needs to focus on perhaps innovation, but there's probably a lot that are more those blind spots. So how are you, when you're building out the, whether it's learning journeys or the learning or all around, how are you ensuring that you're finding those blind spots or those spaces that maybe you wouldn't even have known?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're still learning how to do that. But I'd say our approach is we have a high level idea of some of the things we want to learn, but then you have to create space for what might emerge. So sometimes, for example, we have an idea, like we're right now, our team of coaches is coming up with human skill workshops for us to dive into, right? Communicating, listening, giving and getting feedback. But we don't know when we do the communication link coffee, what's going to emerge. So sometimes there's certain things that emerge that we need to respond to right away because it fits right in and this is the right time to do it. So even though we have a plan, we're always listening for what else might be needed. And if that is something that we weave into the plan that's already existing, or keep it, for something to get back later. So that's our approach. That's why a lot of this is so organic, and it's almost like you have to sense and respond all the time. And if there's other leaders and evangelists in the organization that want to co-create this with us, we always want that, because it's so much more meaningful when we're all part of it, right? Hopefully that makes sense, Lani.
Yes, it does.
Could I just quickly add something to what Mark said? Mark, you quoted that if I come back after a few years, I might not, I think recognize the system. So that's basically system is improving. So which basically means is that how we actually get there. So we need to start focusing on understanding the principles and the value system which we put in place in an organization, so that we don't say, okay, is the ceremonies which we probably install are happening the same way, but rather we actually say, is the team actually delivering on the principles which we wanted them to be delivering? One of the example I could think was one of my team, when we started the Scrum many years ago, they were doing all the ceremonies, all the Scrum things, but over a period of time, they stopped giving the estimates. And to a question earlier, that how much time you set aside for learning, they basically developed a culture that when a problem is there, they in the stand-ups, they look at the problem, they collaborate to solve those problems, rather than basically everybody individually is responsible for their own estimates or the velocity. But the key to that shift was that as management, how the organization is measuring the progress of that team, because the the idea is that team is adding value, delivering value, and is more productive over time, which basically means is sustaining its high performance, not in terms of measuring velocity only, but making a sustainable learning culture where the team is growing together at the same time, delivering value and meeting the business objectives. So the system might be the same, system might be different, but we need to understand those values. But at the same time, we need to have some sort of organizational mechanism where we can measure that how the team over a period of time is becoming better and better. So so that we can basically see, are they actually achieving those business goals?
Well said. All right. There's been a lot of discussion in the chat. Does anybody want to come off, bring that into the larger group discussion? Is there anything there that needs to come forward? Or are there any other ideas or areas we want to explore?
There's a hand raised from Michael. Go ahead.
Michael.
Yeah, I just wonder in terms of learning from your customers as well, what emphasis do you put on that, and how does that come into the learning culture?
That's a great question, Michael. We actually have not explored that as much. I mean, the way that we are incorporating what our customers are saying is if we need to improve maybe our system and processes to be able to better respond to our customers, if there is something we could do to maybe figure out, what are those outcomes that we need to get to. So it really depends on what we hear from the customers. Today, the way we respond to it is by trying to figure out, for example, let's say we're not being as responsive from an incident management perspective. Is there something we need to do to be able to be more responsive and manage our incidents better so that customers are getting more of a timely response? So that's something that we are always doing, because we're always trying to figure out what processes we have in place that is generating that feedback loop back to our customer. But that's a really interesting question as we start to learn together as an organization and really unify our learning across engineering and business. Maybe there is something else we need to do to be able to listen to what our customers' needs are as well.
Yeah, it was one of the organizations I was in. They brought customers in and brought them in front of development teams and actually had a discussion about their business and about how they operated and their thoughts around that. And I thought it was a real learning opportunity for the development teams. And I just wondered, I don't see that in many places, and I just wondered if that was something you'd brought in as well.
We haven't, but that's definitely something that's going to be it's going to be pondering in my head now. I know one thing that we have been doing is our product marketing team has created forums for us to talk to customers to get early feedback on products as we're putting them out in the market. So that is something that we are doing as far as product development, but curious to see what else we would hear from our customers if we really created the space for them to come together with our development teams. So thank you for sharing that.
That's a good point. So in a past life, the organization that I helped coach along with Lonnie was a marketing organization. And that was one of the things that I came across. We, as an organization, had access to Net Promoter Score comments and all kinds of data from the customer talking about, hey, this or that. And it's different than customer support. They weren't complaining or looking for support. They were actually providing product feedback. And I was always striving to, how do we connect product marketing and product offerings so that they can get the same data and actually use it and build it into that cadence? Because I think there's a lot of helpful learning and feedback in that system. Kamal.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share a thought with the group. All these wonderful questions around learning and what to learn and what not to learn and when to learn it and how much to learn it. Something we all probably already know, right? The concept of analysis paralysis. Sometimes when you just open the door and allow learning to come in, it tends to organically fill the gaps where learning is needed. So sometimes we just need to not overanalyze and allow learning to just occur. And that learning will teach us what we need to know at that moment.
Take it away, Erin.
So Kamal, I guess my question for you then would be to avoid analysis paralysis, to let learning in, to let it grow organically. To me, that's encouraging curiosity from the very beginning, because if people are so exhausted from everything, their mind's just going to close, it's going to fossilize. So how do we encourage curiosity about letting knowledge in, about letting things grow?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Erin. That's so true. You're so right. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. I think in this space that we're all in, I absolutely encourage it. The more we're curious, the more we discuss, the more possibility there is to coming up with the right answers, right? So I'm with you. Yeah.
Because I think if we don't model it, if we don't ask the questions, if we don't see it, we're humans, we're lazy. We're going to go, what's the easiest thing to do? Well, let's, slink back to our holes and, just go away. And so, how do we practice it? How do we be it so that it makes it easier for others to try the same?
That's great. So I'll reiterate something that Lakshmi had shared earlier. Personally, I like working from the goal backwards, and that helps me with clarity. Instead of looking at exactly where I'm frozen and how I can make progress forward, I keep an eye on where I know I want to be, and I start working my way back from there. And that helps sometimes.
Start with the outcome, yeah.
Yeah.
Kelsey, that's funny.
Erin called Kelsey out, apparently.
But I always say lazy.
Hey,
just
don't.
more
Yeah,
efficient.
Yeah, sorry, Lonnie. Kelsey, I'm with you. I mean, given my, people are like, Erin, do you want to go wine tasting off in the wine trip? Like, no, that's like a 3-hour drive. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay right here.
Yeah.
It's easy.
But you have no way of knowing what you might discover in that drive. That's the beauty of it.
Ooh, it's a good one.
I know you're right, but I'm like, no.
I actually take an odd approach when it comes to learning, based on a book I read decades ago. The author was Michael Kort. I think the book is called something like Success. There was a quote in there that essentially said, "You never know when all the difference is going to trace to your ability to speak Yiddish." I tend to cast a really wide net because I don't know what won't be good foundation for synthesizing new ideas. If you just start completely with the end in mind, you may actually be shutting off some interesting synergies, some interesting hybrids, some odd things that you would never have realized otherwise.
Like breaking out of functional fixedness, right? Like,
yep.
Yeah.
Getting too detailed into what it is, and you have to have it a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, beekeeping. I know a few coaches who really got into kind of the swarming of insects and birds.
Yeah.
Just as a potential idea for teams working together.
That's a good point. I heard the same thing about horse training, because you can't make a horse doing anything, much like teams. You can't make them do the thing, but you can build a partnership and a relationship and eventually get them to go the direction you want, maybe. But similar but totally out of the box. It's a really good point.
We got a couple more questions, hands, Marie.
It's not really like a question. It was more maybe from a learning experience, and it's to go with what Kamal was saying. Also, like the organic, and Aaron also with like organically allowing that learning to happen, as well as, you know, fostering that curiosity and letting it grow. Just from my experience too, sometimes you want to learn so many things, but then how do you focus on a few things at a time in order to get to where you'll go? And for me, I've had many wonderful coaches who have helped me on this path where they keep reminding me, sometimes start small. And I know sometimes for learning too, it depends, right? Sometimes you may not be able to learn something in like 15 minutes or a half hour, but maybe if you can try to start there and see where it'll take you, you know, it's always a good practice to try to insert it. And I still struggle with that. So I have a Kanban board at home, but for me, I'll let you know how that goes.
One of the things I read, and I can't remember the author, but I like the idea. A lot of times we settle onto a solution or idea too quickly, and other times two is enough. The idea and the quote is really, don't make any decisions until you have three, because it makes you search a little bit more. It makes you think about potential hybrids, and so on. Toyota talks about learning by doing. Their emphasis is on learning, not the doing, making sure that learning is always embedded and that you're harvesting all along the way.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, even learning the wrong things is still learning, right? You can only learn so many wrong things before you start making progress inadvertently in the right direction.
True.
Right,
Joanna, sorry, Lonnie.
Jen. Joanna, we're calling you down. No.
Okay. I guess one of the thoughts or questions that came to mind was, I was curious what anybody's, experience with challenges around like allowing for slack in the system and in, the workflow to allow for people to explore their curiosity and, kind of make that time. So, Lakshmi, I don't know if in Paciolan, were there any sort of like changes that needed to be made to how much work or what work or work in progress, those sorts of things people were doing to kind of allow for more learning and curiosity?
We're still trying to figure that out. We're still trying to grapple the work in progress beast. So I think that as we get more focused on what are the outcomes that we want to get to as a whole organization, I feel like we may be able to tackle taking less things in progress and really getting more things done. I think that's something that we still struggle with as an organization. So coming back to sustainability, it's really hard to build in learning if you don't make the time for it, right? Because the system is going to continue to win. The work will continue to overpower all the space that you've created. So that is something we're still trying to tackle. So our hope is over the next couple of years, we're going to all be thinking about sustainability. We're going to talk about what sustainability means to us as an organization, and really be transparent about how we get there.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to second that in terms of sustainable pace has been an agile principle. And that isn't about going as fast as you possibly can. That's going at a pace you can sustain. And some of that is learning. It's very important to be learning and improving and taking that time. So creating slack is actually critical to any system, no matter whether it's engineering or any other kind of system. You need the slack in the system.
It's a good thing this is being recorded, Michael. If you will share that snippet out.
Complete deniability.
All right, any other comments? questions, thoughts? This has been a fantastic discussion so far, really robust. So thank you all.
Yeah, I can't wait to read all of the chat comments because I missed that whole conversation happening on chat.
There's been a lot.
While we're wrapping up, I know Michael has his hand raised and I don't want to leave a comment unsaid.
All right, I'm taking it down. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. If you have anything, we do have a couple minutes though. If not, we'll wrap it up. All right. One moment here.
So we're just going to close. We're just going to wrap up with a few comments. We want to say thank you to Lakshmi and give you a little preview of what's coming next month.
Yes. Yes, hopefully we'll see more of you back here next week. We are super excited to have Carrie Suti, who is going to speak to us about exploring Agile coaching certifications. Carrie was a former board member of Agile Austin, so we're excited to have her come in and talk this through. She wants it to be an interactive time to really think about, especially for coaches, whether internal, external, like what's going to support you in your learning journey. So here we're going to continue talking about learning and get some more kind of direction from Carrie. So same, what date is that, by the way, Sid?
I believe it's April 3rd. April 3rd, I think. It's the first Monday in April. So even if I have the date wrong, you know it is the first Monday in April.
Yes, yes. And definitely you can find it on Meetup. And we hope to see you all there. If you have any questions before then, feel free to reach out to us on Meetup or LinkedIn.
And thank you so much again, Lakshmi. It was a fantastic conversation. Loved hearing about your experience and your journey and the discussion with everybody here. You all really do make this meetup. So thank you for being part of this with us. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thanks to everyone for their support and great discussions.